Hello and thanks for joining School of the American Rifle. Today's video is an update video about our Ruger Secret Chopper series. Some of our viewers don't like the short format videos, and I apologize for that. But instead of just blowing past these things while I'm out here working, I figured I'd do some short videos to document them. If this format isn't for you, I completely understand. That being said, this one will be a short one. So all 7 of these Ruger AR556s had issues where the carrier key was coming extremely close to striking the lower receiver. And we have a gauge that we check with that. You can use 2/4 in place of the gauge. What people don't realize is if you add a suppressor to the gun or you're using really hot ammo, it's possible that the rubber pad on your buffer can collapse more, and that gets your carrier key closer to hitting the lower receiver. So to prevent that, you want to have the right amount of distance between those two when you collapse the spring and buffer all the way down with the bolt carrier. And again, I've shown that in other videos. You can use 2/4 in place of the gauge. But there's a couple ways that you can fix this problem. One, you can just simply drop a 1/4 into the buffer tube and then put your spring and buffer on top of that, and that will change the gap behind your carrier key to your lower receiver. That's one way. Another way is to try a different buffer tube receiver extension to see if you can get that clearance right. And I tried that with multiple brands. It isn't working. Sometimes it's just the dimensions of the buffer, the carrier, the low receiver, and the receiver extension all just not getting along quite right. And then the third option is the Gunsmith option, and that's what I did with all 7 of these. Now, I didn't document me actually doing the work, but it's pretty straightforward. Basically, what you do is you want to get another rotation out of the receiver extension. And the problem is that when you try to do that, the lower lip here runs into the buffer retainer. You don't want that because you want your buffer retainer to pop up to hold your buffer in place when you take the upper off. Now, some people will say, well, just screw it in and leave the buffer retainer out. That's a problem because sometimes the receiver extension buffer tube can protrude, and that'll prevent you from closing your upper receiver. So you could just grind the whole face of the buffer tube off so you could get another turn out of it, but sometimes that causes some strange engagement between the threads here, and then how deep it sits back in this tube. We want to try to make as much contact with the threads as possible with this lower receiver. So the way that I've found that works the best is to basically just take the surface from here over, so from here over, and take it down. And then notch, let's see if we can get this into focus, notch the lower portion of the buffer tube or receiver extension so it can allow the buffer retainer to pop up into that notch. Otherwise, the shelf would stick out too far. You'd have to cut the whole shelf back. So this is the way that I modify it. You can see some of the files here. I just use a round file to cut that notch. And then I use a flat file to come across the surface, and I keep doing some fitting and making sure, again, that this top portion doesn't protrude out like this when you put it together, and that we have enough clearance there with that notch so our buffer retainer moves freely. And because we're taking this down, we can get another turn out of the tube, and that increases the gap between the back of the carrier key and the lower receiver. So sounds a little complex, but it's actually quite simple. But that's the Gunsmith fix. As always, I hope you found this video educational, and thanks for watching.